Good morning, everybody. My name is Paul Stronsky, and I'm Senior Fellow in the Russia and Eurasia program at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace here in Washington, D.C. Good afternoon to those of you watching in Europe, and good evening to those of you watching in Central Asia. We'd like to welcome you to our live virtual event on the upcoming Kyrgyzstan's presidential elections, which we've entitled What's Next? I'd like to thank our longstanding partners for helping us organizing this. This is a joint effort with Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty, the Davis Center at Harvard University, the Central Asia Program at George Washington University, and the Oxus Society for Central Asian Affairs. We're also going to be following up this event with a discussion on the elections in Kazakhstan next week. That will be hosted by the GW, their Central Asian program. Now, we've seen a lot of, the last time we brought a group of people to discuss Kyrgyzstan, it was a little over 2 months ago. Seems like a lifetime ago in all the changes we've seen in the world. But this fall was really quite tumultuous. After the elections in Kyrgyzstan in October 2020, the former President Jeenbekov was ousted. We've seen a real rise of sort of some criminal groups. Kyrgyzstan is now holding early presidential elections and a referendum on constitutional reform on January 10th, which is 2 days away. Leading this push for these elections and the referendum is Sadyr Japarov, who really rose to power in the last few months. And he's really risen to some senior ranks. We've also worryingly in the last few months have seen a rising repression and rising intimidation. Kyrgyzstan has long been known in the United States, in the West, as Central Asia's only democracy. But I think that is certainly being tested both in the recent events, but also in the rising concern over civil liberties, civil society, journalism, and the intimidation that we've been seeing in the last few weeks. So what I'd like to do, I would like to sort of turn it over to our panelists to give us a sort of an update of what's going on and their projections for the future, talk about this election, the problems that the country is facing, and where we go from here. I'd like to introduce our panels. The first we have is Ambassador Bakit Beshimov, who's a faculty member and professor at Northeastern University in the Global Studies and International Relations program. He's a former ambassador of Kyrgyzstan to Bangladesh, India, Nepal, and Sri Lanka, and Kyrgyzstan's parliamentary representative to the OSCE in Europe. We have Dr. Asel Dolotkheldieva, who's an associate fellow at the OSCE Academy in Bishkek, where her research focuses on social mobilization, democratization, and institution building in Kyrgyzstan and the region. And she has a PhD from the University of Exeter. We have Kubat Kasimbekov, who works for the RFERL's Kyrgyz service. He worked for the Kyrgyz service in the BBC in London for quite a while and joined the Prague headquarters of RFERL in 2016. And I believe he's been doing a lot of reporting from Bishkek. And we have from Osh, we have Akalis Perspective, who's an activist with over 10 years of experience in peace building and development programs in Kyrgyzstan. She's based in Osh, as I mentioned, and she works for the Center for the Support of International Protection and T Media, a local media outlet. So if I could turn it over to our speakers, I'd like to each of you to give about five minutes or so, and then we can move to question and answers. We have a live audience who can pose their questions via the YouTube live chat, and they will be piped into us inside in this forum. So maybe I'll turn to Asel first. If she could sort of set the scene, remind us why these elections are being held, what are the stakes, what are the problems, and what are the prospects, and what are the concerns moving forward for the next that we all should be watching for the next few days. Please, Asel.
Sure. Good evening or good morning for you. Glad to be here to discuss this important event. Just to contextualize indeed these elections and upcoming referendum. So on October the 5th, 2020, Kyrgyzstan witnessed a third formal, forceful change of government, if not to account for two other informal. In 2012, there was an attempted coup, actually by Japarov, Tasheev, and Mamytov, the leading troika of today's politics. And in 2017, the constitutional coup organized by Atambayev. So we have another cycle of revolutionary situations in Kyrgyzstan. What has happened then on the 5th of October, one could probably frame as a large demonstration went gone wrong. People who gathered on the main square in Bishkek demanded to cancel the outcomes of rigged elections and to announce the new elections. However, there were also other reasons for that outcry, public outcry. It's basically the criticism, public criticism of corruption and also the mismanagement of COVID pandemic. And this public outcry was there for quite some time, but the central authorities turned a blind eye on both of the issues, the corruption and the pandemic. So the authorities were basically failed to attend to popular grievances. And when the large demonstrations took place, the authorities once again failed to attend to these grievances because Jeenbekov had a chance to meet the people and stop the violence. So, and we also have another thing is that nobody on that day among the political elites were able to lead the change. This is something what I call a crisis of authentic figures, is that we have plenty of political parties and plenty of informal leaders, but nobody could fill the gap. But Japarov did. So once out of the prison, he immediately rushed to the main square and filled this political space free. He claimed that he is outside of the establishment, he has a clean reputation with no corruption record, and this way he managed to somehow usurpate the public space. It seems like he was aided by some connections to mafia and large money. With the help of, there's information that with the help of Matraimov, he was able to take control of the parliament, sideline the deputies, place his own friend as the president of the parliament, and also sidelined the acting president. So the very rapid fall of the incumbent president Jeenbekov was really something that nobody expected because nobody demanded for it. And from the simply a scientific perspective, it's really interesting to see how the regime became really fragile under the pressure of the organized crime and big oligarchy. So after Jeenbekov was removed, Japarov managed to place his friends and people to important key positions. So he took under control the general prosecution, he took under control the special security forces, basically the main coercive apparatus, so in order to exert influence on the courts, justices, and on other branches of power. And this is how he then prepared himself a ground for an easy victory. So by also skillfully playing with the popular grievances, he claimed as he is now very much supported by ordinary people. So he is tapping into different types of grievances, nationalistic ones, but also religious. So he is, people are associating him with a God's messenger, a little bit like Trump's evangelist support base in the US. So there is a lot of mixture of different types of sentiments, which is making him very popular among the ordinary citizens. And the different surveys, for example, show that if tomorrow there were elections, he would get 64 or 68% of popular vote. Interestingly, actually, the people whom I've been talking to, they don't really know about his program. They're not really interested to know what are the Japarov's ideas, how to reform the country, for example. What is interesting is that they are feeling themselves the Japarov's agenda with all different types of demands. Somebody wants him to, for example, fight against corruption. Somebody wants him to fight against the Chinese migrants. Somebody wants him to, I don't know, put the ethnic minorities on their places. And this kind of filling basically Japarov's agenda with their own grievances. So this is very interesting that Japarov, in my opinion, doesn't really belong to himself. He now belongs to the people in that sense. So, and I think that unless something extraordinary happens on the 10th of January, he is gonna be winning with a landslide victory in the first round. We have very good opposition leaders, and they are kind of representing different types of segments of population. There are religious leaders, there are a lot of liberals, but unfortunately, nobody is really interested in their programs or ideas, because the way people support the vote for Japarov, the support for Japarov is not a creative vote, if I might say that. It's a destructive vote. What they want with him is not only a hope for future, they want to punish. The anti-elite, the anti-establishment discourse is so extremely huge in Kyrgyzstan that they basically see in Japarov an instrument to punish the elite and to put an end to corruption. So to probably a little bit wrap up my my talk here is that what I'm trying to say is that so he will be most likely winning the elections. It's going to be a very easy victory for him because he already captured the state's apparatus, so which is working very well for him right now. The elites have defected from Jeenbekov and now joined his team because they want to continue having access to the pie, and he has a overwhelming popular support who actually also support the return to strong authoritarianism. So, for example, the ideas of Kurultai are supported to 51% among the population. The support of the holding of the referendum is supported to 70%. And this idea of a strong president is basically why it re-emerged after, one can ask, we had such a bad experience of strong presidentialism in Kyrgyzstan, so why people would forget about this negative experience and one will want to go back to that kind of governance, is that because an idea emerged that a relationship to the president can restore the people's sovereignty, the people's power, because they can appoint the president, but they can also remove it. Is this kind of normalization of the coup, normalization of the popular uprising as a kind of a normal way to get rid of a leader that they don't want anymore. Whereas it's very difficult to remove 120 deputies, to remove the parliament. So that's why people support today very much these ideas of returning to the authoritarianism. And of course, there are very heavy consequences of that, and we might discuss that later during the discussion. If I'm running out of time, I'm not sure about that. If not, I can say a couple of words about the consequences.
Let's look at the consequences maybe in the discussion, you know, it doesn't seem like that's going to be what you describe is going to be a recipe for stability in the long term either, which I think is equally troubling. Now for Kubat, I was wondering, you know, could you tell us a little bit about the situation on the ground in Bishkek and the country? You know, how do you sort of see this electoral process going? What are your expectations for the vote? And, you know, what are the pitfalls and problems that you know, people should be watching out for?
Hello, everybody. Thank you, Paul, for this opportunity, and thank you, Asel, for an excellent overview. Today is the final day of the election campaign, and the presidential candidates, 7 of them, have less than 12 hours to finalize their campaign. And on the first days of this campaign, many observers noted that this campaign would have like less drama or less unpredictability compared to the 2017 presidential election, because this campaign started with, as Asel said, one candidate's enormous advantage or dominance in many ways. For example, shortly after the campaign kicked off, Bishkek and several other cities in the country were overwhelmed by Sadyr Japarov's posters and adverts, and the same could be said for online and TV adverts. And according to the Central Election Commission's latest figures, Japarov has officially spent more money than all remaining candidates had spent during this election campaign. And I think this is around $700,000 officially. And as we know, during the last parliamentary election campaign, we witnessed a fierce competition between parties, not only on the ground, but also on social media. But compared to the parliamentary elections, the first 2 weeks of this current campaign was relatively calmer and quieter. Nevertheless, towards the middle and the end of this campaign, we started witnessing some activities and movements from other candidates. For example, 4 oppositional candidates, Kanabek Imanaliyev, Adakhan Madumarov, Kanat Isayev, and Clara Soronkulova decided to join their forces, mostly against Sadyr Japarov. And they said that they would back one candidate should there be a runoff election. And some candidates have complained about the misuse of state resources, where actually Japarov's allies now occupy mostly top posts. And for example, Japarov's one of the main challengers, Adakhan Madumarov, said that his team was denied an access to certain campaigning regions. And another candidate, Abdil Sigizbayev, said bandits threatened his campaign staff members. And actually, today is the last round of the televised debates going on the national TV channel. And during those debates, many candidates kind of criticized Japarov and his possible policies, but Japarov denied all the allegations, but he didn't show up for both rounds of these televised debates. And he described this debate as a place of rumors, yes? And despite the current authorities' promise, some non-governmental organizations like Common Cause have reported of some cases when administrative resources were misused, when someone tried to intimidate voters. For example, Common Cause reported that one case which took place in the Karasu district, which is the most populated district in Kyrgyzstan. According to their report, young men went to house in the region and demanded that people should vote for Japarov, otherwise they would see some consequences. But Japarov's supporters and the local police have denied these reports, and police described this kind of report as baseless. The new government, which was formed after the October event, is saying that they have created all possible conditions for free and fair elections. A few days ago, Vice Prime Minister Maksat Mamadkhanov took part in our political talk show in Bishkek and said that irregularities recorded during this campaign would be kind of considered nothing compared to what we witnessed during the parliamentary elections in October. Another peculiarity of this campaign is that it's being kind of accompanied by the use of online trolls and online attacks targeting certain politicians, journalists and media organizations like RFRL's Kyrgyz service, Cloak Media, and also other independent media outlets. And actually this case was mentioned in OSCE Observer's interim report, which was published, I think, 2 weeks ago. And actually, since the October events, media outlets like RFRL's Kyrgyz service and other media organizations have received plenty of online threats from social media users, including anonymous accounts who call themselves kind of Japarov supporters or supporters of the current government. For last few weeks, we are witnessing some reports from TV channels which are associated with members of the current government, kind of promoting some allegations toward certain media outlets. And as many local and international experts emphasize, journalists have played enormous role in revealing corruption schemes in Kyrgyzstan. RFRL's Kyrgyz service, alongside its partners like CLOB, OCCRP, uncovered a deep corruption scheme at the Kyrgyz state customs and on the Kyrgyz-Chinese border as well, which actually corruption scheme that created conditions to plunder millions of dollars. And the main character of our investigative report, Raimbek Matraimov, former deputy head of the Kyrgyz state customs, was reportedly a key financial backer for the Mechanim Kyrgyzstan party, which dominated the October 4 parliamentary elections by reportedly shady ways. So our journalists faced the pressure and threats when we were working on those investigative reports, and it's really concerning that these kind of cases, we are witnessing this kind of cases, threats and online intimidations over and over again. So in any case, as Asel said, currently kind of many people whom I spoke giving their preference towards one candidate, and also many people actually supporting Japarov's ideas to turn to the presidential system of governance. And but I should say that it's still unclear whether a majority of the voters had enough time and information to make a choice on determining the form of governance. I should also mention that throughout this campaign, civil activists continued protesting the proposed draft of the new constitution, mostly on Sundays. And hence, we are yet to see whether this presidential election and the referendum will bring kind of a rapid stability to the country.
Great. Thank you very much. And now in the interest of time, I might just jump over and get Akalis' perspective, get her thoughts of, what she is, what are residents in Osh and what they're thinking and saying about this election. How does it differ from the perspective of people based in Bishkek? What's the sort of civil society expectations, both for the vote and what comes next? And also, I think a lot of our discussions in the past, we've gotten a Bishkek view of the political turmoil that's been happening in the country. So I think our audience would really appreciate an Osh view of everything that's happened in the last few months too. So please.
Thank you very much for inviting me. It's a pleasure to join you and give some perspective from Osh. So I would like to start with the little, game of differences between the absolute candidate for the president and with other previous candidates that we have witnessed in the past history. So we have, let's say we had before Jeenbekov, Atambayev, Rozotenbayev, Bakiyev, and Akayev for 30 years. So there's we have formed a tradition of unconditional candidates to the presidential elections. So if you see the history of presidential elections, before they took place, everybody knew who would be winning, who is the favorite, who is the absolute unconditional candidate. So this time it's no difference. So Sadyr Japarov is being as Kubat and Asel mentioned, he is the only actual candidate that has took a huge advantage from the, let's say, establishment and the wild population of Kyrgyzstan. So, but there's a difference between so Sadyr Japarov and others, and I would say from Osh, I see the difference is that even though Sadyr Japarov is being originally not from Osh, not from the south, but from northern Issyk, let's say, he still gained a lot of support and loyalty from both elite southern establishment, let's say, and the wide population. So I can say that by many interviews and many conversations I had with local people here, and they are not concerned about the fact that he is not from Osh, he's not from South, but they have no any concern that he actually was in previous team of Bakiyev. In fact, this actually is not something that would be, worrying the random population. But I would say that this is something that the local population would argue that, so if he is with Maxim Bakiyev or Kurmanbek Bakiyev, maybe it's for good rather than for bad. So people still have the sentiments that Sadyr Japarov would be, if he would be restoring the legacy of Bakiyev, this is not a big deal for them, So this is the first thing that I would like to mention. And the second thing is that even though he was kind of the first consolidating candidate for both regions, North and South, he still divided the society, and he divided between those who actually are so much in euphoria about Sadyr Japarov and those who actually are pro-law, pro-rule of law in Kyrgyzstan, mostly civil activists and mostly the young people in Center Bishkek. Kubat mentioned that every Sunday those young people, they go for march. I think this is something that this is not a new conflict, I would say, for Kyrgyzstan, that the leader actually dividing the civil society and puts the confronting sides between them. This is not new, but the new thing is that the candidate is doing that before he took place, before he showed up in president's office, which means that if he is elected president, then it's gonna bring us to more confrontation, I guess, already between the government and the civil society. So, and given the large number of violations before and during the elections, there's a big concern that the rule of law will be so fragile. And actually, we have a big concern in question: will rule of law still exist in Kyrgyzstan? And is there still a demand for rule of law? Because people, they got so much in euphoria about Sadyr Japarov, and they actually wait for Sadyr Japarov to be president so much, so that they avoid the necessity, the demand for rule of law, which means that this is actually one of the, I think, the potential for conflict that will that will actually bring a wider gap between the government and actually civil society. And also there's and I would like also to mention about the illustration. So Sadyr Japarov, in his speeches during the meetings in Osh, Karasu, he talked so much about lustration, but at the same time in Talas, where he visited, I guess 2 weeks ago, he admitted that he had to. He actually was obliged to get in his team his relatives working for him. This is the first fact that he actually admitted. And the second fact that during the elections, we saw so much, as Kubat mentioned, advertisements and for Sadyrov and etc. And the interesting fact is that how actually the illustration could be available in a country where the leader is taking an advantage of the resources of the previous supporters of the pro-government party Birimdik and the the kingpins Matraimov's party Mekenim Kyrgyzstan. So if you're down in Osh, you can see that all of the banners that used to actually advertise the commercials for those parties, now they're being used for Sadyr Japarov's campaign. Also, there is another fact that those offices that were used to be the offices of Birimdik and Mekenim Kyrgyzstan, so many of them are now used for the offices for Sadyr Japarov's campaign, which is actually a big deal because this actually leaves the question how far the illustration is real in Kyrgyzstan under the Sadyr Japarov's leadership. And also, I would this third concern that I would like to raise is that the regional Kyrgyzstan, especially Kyrgyzstan, which is out of the country, mostly working in Russia as labor migrants, they are too concerned about the debt of Kyrgyzstan. They're not concerned about the form of leadership, presidential or parliamentarian. They're not concerned about other political things that also very crucial for Kyrgyzstan, but they are concerned about the debt, especially to China. And they're concerned how this debt will be handled under the leadership of Japarov if he actually had two kind of fails. First, when he was just out from the jail, he promised that Kumtor will be handled in the way that he promised and that he was pro-nationalistic before, but then after 2 days, he said so. He admitted that Kumtor issue is a very big deal and he cannot handle that right now, and he cannot actually raise the issue of nationalization of Kumtor, which actually was kind of a big, big deal for those people who were waiting for the decisive efforts to get the nationalization done. So those people actually have the concerns that will Japarov actually with the Jetim 2 in Narin, is he serious about giving away Jetim 2 and in this so will this be his approach actually to get the debt issue done with China? So they are pretty much concerned about this, and I think there's a big bomb. So about the, if we are talking about the consequences, and I'll be also touching upon that, but I would go a bit further and say that there is a big bomb here in this deal, I guess, in dealing with the debt, because so Sadyr Japarov is being so much how to say, he is not definite about the depth. He's saying about Jetim to one thing, and then there is another thing. And then today, from the government, from the leadership of the government in Bishkek, we heard that so Jetim to giving away Jetim to was just the opinion of Sadyr Japarov. It was not the actual issue that we are, as the government of Kyrgyzstan, are handling. So this is mainly the takeaway from Osh. But I would say mainly that I would also actually note that those election campaigns that were run during parliamentarian elections In Osh, they're just the same. So what we see, we have from other regions, we have ethnic minorities, and they're being approached by the people of Sadyr Japarov in the same way as they were approached by the people of Birimdik previously. What I'm saying specifically is that we have right now the booming construction business. So there are multi-stored houses being constructed everywhere across the city. And what's happening is that, so we just found out that around 40 residents of the definite rayon, they were approached by the construction company saying that from now on, this land is theirs and they're going to build a house there. And they had no actual, they had no message before. And Birimdik people, they showed up saying, well, we're going to handle your problem, just vote for us. Okay, so this is the same thing happening right now. So the people saying that they are representing Sadyr Japarov down in Osh, they're approaching the same people, ethnic Uzbeks, saying, we're going to handle your problem. Your land will stay with you. There is no construction company will take over, but just vote for us. And that's actually the one actual fact that it's all the same. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. And now, sort of, now if we could go to Bakit for his perspective as somebody who's been worked in the Kyrgyz government for a long time, who's now outside of government and overseas. What is the sort of the historic perspective? What is the trajectory for Kyrgyzstan? What are the democratic prospects, and what do you see sort of from your perspective as somebody who's now outside of why is this happening, and what's the way forward? So please. And I know he has a few slides, so. I think you're still muted.
Thank you. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. First of all, Paul, thank you very much for defining the right approach to this problem. And secondly, I would like to just also thanks all speakers for sharing very valuable information. And now I would like to turn your attention to some essentials of this situation.
Have we lost? Here?
2005 and 2020 have happened after the parliamentary elections. This constitutional referendum aims to reverse the outcomes of a constitutional referendum in 2010. All regime changes were instigated and organized by the wealthy elites who used the ordinary people as their weapon. But what is happening now has very distinctive traits. If before the key actors, their capacity and aims were known, now we deal with the flap politics. When we lift one flap, we see another flap. And how many flaps, we don't know. Many legitimate questions and only few answers. And here I would like to ask Tatiana to bring to our attention my first slide. We have these questions, but we don't have answers to these questions. And without answers to these questions, we cannot explain and understand the situation. Sadyr Japarov, fresh off prison, has risen suddenly as anti-establishment movement leader, the leader of radical, transformative political change. Kyrgyzstan didn't see the populist and demagogue of such scale. He became the symbol of ordinary people's grievances and their only hope. He rises from the failure of mainstream politics, and today invented the mainstream politics at the center of which is his phenomenon. Secondly, we see appearance of triumvirate, a system of government wherein free people share the highest political power. Sadyr Japarov friends Kamchi Bektashev is the head of National Security Committee, and Talant Mamutov is the interim president. We still don't know how they forced President Jeenbekov to resign, impose their will on the entire national elite, and set up tight control over president administration, government, and parliament during a concise period of time. It's still puzzling. Previously, after 2005, Bakiyev, and after 2010, Atambayev spent 1 or 2 years to consolidate such power. Japarov did it in a very short period of time. After that, old factors like Savnov do not play a decisive role today. The Kyrgyz triumvirate has popular support in all opponents combined have more than 1 million followers in a country with 6 million. The number of his opponents' combined followers in this election is not even remotely close to this number. His opponents, the progressive politicians, are alienated from a broad mass of a native rural population. And if you look at my second slide,
Tanya, I think we're having some problems with his voice is back. Okay.
It's okay. And I see that in my view, we have some signs that he is connected to Bakiyev's clan. Bakiyev's clan. And this should be investigated and explained. Secondly, I would like to just explain a little bit about the situation in the Kyrgyz prison system. Kyrgyzstan is the only country in the region where all prisons control. And that's why we can just guess that probably here is the connection of Sadyr Japarov and his sudden rise with the criminal world, not only of Kyrgyzstan. 2 years ago, it was the big gathering of thieves on law in post-Soviet era in Tashkent, and they decided to connect criminal world of Central Asia to the Russian criminal world. And after that, if you look attentively to the Kamchi Kolbayev and his role, and we should just ask ourselves, is it a connection between Kamchi Kolbayev, criminal world, and Sadyr Japarov? Because how it is possible during a very short period of time to organize and to maintain such expensive political campaign. I was manager of a presidential campaign of Atambayev in 2009. And I analyzed some videos of Sadyr Japarov. And I can say that I calculated carefully, and taken to account my experience. His one meeting in my assessment cost about more than $20,000 at least. But he organized this campaign almost in all cities, all capitals of provinces, and so on. And this is a big amount of money. And probably this is connected to the amnesty of capital of his policy. And probably amnesty of capitals just aimed to ask all these wealthy people in Kyrgyzstan, oligarchs, to invest in his campaign. Regarding the trajectory for Kyrgyzstan, today there are no viable alternatives to Japarov and this triumvirate. They enjoy popular support and have real chances to win on January 10. After that, their supporters can determine the outcomes of the election to the parliament. But triumvirate uses existing liberties in the country to reestablish the strongman rule based on popular support. He wants to kill embryo of parliamentarism as a corrupt and alien to the Kyrgyzstan system of governance. Sadyr Japarov aims to unite traditionalists, nationalists, religiously conservative ordinary people against the Kyrgyz establishment and redesign society's construction. To maximize his power, he will strive to establish a modern authoritarian police state. In that sense, politically, he is close to leaders like Trump, Erdogan, or Orban. I see the
maybe just about a few seconds left, because we have a lot of questions coming in all of a sudden.
Yeah. And I see the democratic prospects for our country. Given that young Kyrgyz democracy rests on the balance of regional clans, political groups, and emerging civil society, I can say that Sadyr Japarov can change the balance of power and establish strongman rule. But his regime's durability depends on the state of economy and basic social services for people. It is a populist protest movement. It often asks good questions, blames its opponents, but have no answers to these questions. There are no serious signs that he understands the complexity of problems and promote needed reforms. He inherited the burden of misdevelopment and an unbalanced economy. So the country's problems pose huge challenge even to effective progressive leaders. Like all populists, Sadyr Japarov's movements gains traction of scolding the elites for corruption. But today, being in power, I think he will out-corrupt them. Here, I'd like to end.
Great, thank you very much. Now, if we could just go maybe to the first question that SL put out about what are the consequences of the return to this presidential system? What are the consequences of the return towards this greater authoritarian? We've got questions about whether Kyrgyzstan, whether that island of democracy notion is relevant anymore. It certainly seems like it's not. But what are the implications of this move? You're on mute.
I think such a cliche has to be actually removed from Kyrgyzstan. Is long overdue. Kyrgyzstan hasn't been really an island of democracy. It has been always a patronal presidentialism, right? To use Henry Hale's term. It's a form of institutions which are very typical to Eurasia, and where a president plays always a strong role. And in 2010, it didn't really matter that we kind of transited towards semi-parliamentarism, because the president always stayed strong. And this is one of the major sources of our instability, of our constant swings between presidentialism towards semi-presidentialism and back to presidentialism. And unless we remove this temptation to use the coercive power of the state, unless we remove the strong presidentialism and therefore the president's access to intimidation, cooptation, and other means to basically end political pluralism, Kyrgyzstan will be always remaining in this very hyper instability. So this is one thing. And therefore, although the developments right now immediately look really scary, I would be far from saying that this is definitive, because I think there's going to be another swing back to some sort of pluralism. Why? Because for one thing, the window of opportunity, which was open in 2010 with the semi-parliamentarism, lasted for some, not 10 years, a little bit less, because President Atambayev already tried to usurp power by nominating his political heir in 2017. That's where I think really the regress began, actually. And today we have simply a culmination of this regress. But this window of opportunity still nevertheless lasted for some time. And this created some larger elites, the business elites. I'm not saying that they're all Democrats and liberals, but definitely they enjoy freedom. Freedom to conduct business, freedom to be in politics. So I don't know to which extent they will be today happy to get under a tighter control and maybe even repression organized by the new presidency. So most likely this cycle of returning to the strong presidentialism will not last that long. This is one of my hopes. Yet there are going to be repercussions of this referendum and of the return to authoritarianism, obviously. For the moment, I cannot speak of the long-term consequences because nobody can speak of long-term consequences in Kyrgyzstan. This is absolutely impossible. But we can still kind of think about the immediate and the a little bit medium-term consequences. So what I'm seeing, how people perceive Japarov and how they connect hopes and the grievances to him is that the expectations that they place into him, and they really a wide range of expectations, people really wanting from him all sorts of things. Most likely he will not be able to meet them because the Kyrgyz economy is almost on the same level as in '94. And even previously, even before actually the October event, according to World Bank report, it was saying that the Kyrgyz economy never managed actually to catch up the standards of development prior to independence. So given the huge gap in the budget and no prospects of really getting any international aid, I think the prospects of Japarov to meet the economic ends and satisfy all those expectations are very meager. Mm-hmm. And that's where I think China gonna jump in. And that's where we're gonna be very interesting developments, because partly the Japarov support is anti-Chinese support. There are huge anti-Chinese sentiments, and I'm not saying that they are fully kind of naturally grown, homegrown. There is some also, I see at least some kind of that it's artificially being constructed as an anti-Chinese discourse. Nevertheless, there are the sentiments, although Japarov will be bound to China because this is the only country that will be willing to give a huge credit independently, whether the leader is a Democrat or a populist. So, but that would create a lot of repercussions for the national identity project that he's trying to construct, to nationalism and so on. And that's where I think being unable to meet these demands, yet he will have to somehow release these tensions and frustrations elsewhere. And that's where I'm becoming concerned that he will find other scapegoats, such as ethnic minorities, sexual minorities, feminist women in general, to channel their popular frustrations. And the past 10 years were already marked by such developments. This ethnic minorities, sexual minorities, all these people were already being a scapegoat for all the crisis of masculinity in Kyrgyzstan, right? And I think this is going to be only jeopardized.
Okay, great. Maybe we could jump on that topic to Akalai. We've got a question about sort of what are the feelings of the Uzbek community, particularly in the south, and if you could give us some perspectives. Also have a question to you about sort of how criminality in the south functions. Is there only Maturimov, or are there other criminal leaders that have equal power in politics there?
Thank you very much. So there's a comment on Twitter saying that Uzbeks were voting always for the power or for the perceived power. So this is true, absolutely, and because we could see what happened during the campaign, presidential campaign of Babanov in Onadyr. That's the district where ethnic minorities mostly live. And so it was a hugely provocative event where Babanov and not just Babanov actually suffered from that, but his supporters in Onadyr. So that was a huge lesson learned from this case to many Uzbeks living here, not just in Osh, but also in other regions of southern Kyrgyzstan. So the model of supporting and, not just supporting, but the participation in political events was actually adapted, and it was not new like under Atambayev's leadership. It was always there during Akayev's leaderships, Bakiyev's leadership, and etc. But I would mainly highlight that during Atambayev's leadership, it was kind of highlighted for Uzbek that they have to stay with people in power because that's the sign of stability for them. And the June events were actually echoing in those arguments more and more. So I think the situation for Uzbeks never changed with Sadyr Japarov's leadership. I think it just this model is being inherited and is being used wildly, and I just told you about that. I'm 100% sure that Uzbeks, they will be voting for Sadyr Japarov, not because, they share those sentiments that widely Kyrgyz population is sharing right now, but because he is the absolute unconditional candidate that will definitely step in the office, and they don't want to, they don't want to spoil their future. They don't want to have get in trouble with Sadyrov leadership, so that they will be, of course, voting with whole families and with whole mahallas for Sadyr Japarov. That's absolutely predictive. Another thing is that how the issues will be handled under Sadyr Japarov's leadership, because it's very interesting, because if the theory that Sadyr Japarov's leadership is being sourced from Maxim Bakiyev or Bakiyev's family, that's we know that for Uzbek minorities, Bakiyev's leadership was not the best one. So what we know from many reports is that during Bakiyev's leadership, many Uzbek leaders were oppressed. Many businesses actually and entrepreneurs, they had to pay even more under Bakiyev's leadership. So during Akayev's leadership, it was kind of favorable. But during Bakiyev's leadership, many leaders of Uzbek minorities, they had to actually, they were in big struggle. So if Sadyr Japarov will be sourcing the general line of his so-called patrons on handling the ethnic minorities, the issues of handling the ethnic minorities, I'm sure that it will actually fuel more I would say fuel more oil into the already big trouble since 2010. So, and also I would also note on the elections that it's not just with the ethnic minorities, but with minorities, I would say eventually the civil society activists, we found ourselves as minority too. So what I expect is that not just ethnic minorities, but also the independent journalists, the bloggers, the civil activists, the NGOs, huge civil society organizations, we are all in target of huge intimidation because we are the first actual, not just, the troublemakers, I wouldn't say so, but we are the easy way to grab and to show the power. We are easy to approach, and we are easy to brand as if we are pro-Western or we are not pro-Kyrgyz, and etc. So I expect that this will come, and this will come not just with the new parliament, but it will come like with the new office of president. So that's the hugest big concern. And I would also add that the people who actually ask the questions about Sadyr Japarov, they are becoming more and more, which is actually absolutely interesting phenomenon in Kyrgyzstan, because from absolute euphoria in the beginning of October, we are actually witnessing actually how the people in Chuy Oblast and the people from other regions like Aksy in Jalalabad, they are raising the questions how Sadyr Japarov is legitimate, how far he is true leader, if he actually handles the power in a way that favors himself. For instance, if you remember, he let the Matraimov go from the jail, and he took like 200 million soms. And there was a big grievance from Aksy region where the people actually were in fight after the elections, and one of them was injured and passed away. So, and two people who are allegedly found guilty, they are now in prison waiting for the court. And his relatives, actually their relatives, they asked Sadyr Japarov to let them go because, you know, by their opinion, they are not that guilty. And this is very interesting because Sadyr Japarov, he himself set the precedent that he can actually handle the court and handle the justice and rule of law himself without any, you know, the traditional system of court and etc. And people believed in that, right? And now when they approach Sadyr Japarov to handle the same way as he handled for Matraimov, they actually, their request was rejected. And these people now question, like, how is Sadyr Japarov his real true leader? Why is that he is actually letting the people in corruption go, but the people who are actually with their grievances in no corruption, etc., they still in prison? This is the first. And the next thing is that people in Chuy Oblast actually...
We've got a couple other questions, so if we can, we're at the end. So
yeah, okay. We saw many videos where actually the man from Chuy Oblast were saying that Sadyr Japarov, you are no longer a true leader for us because you are surrounded by the bandits. Thank you.
Okay, so we've sort of run out of time, but we can go a few minutes over if that's okay with everyone else. You know, one of the questions that I think we've come up is, you know, what are some common characteristics about the people who support Japarov? You know, what is the income level? You know, are they urban, rural? Do they have strong conservative religious views, nationalist views, or is it just sort of all a broad spectrum of that? I don't know if Kubat or Batik or Asel have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, Kubat.
Okay.
Fine.
Actually, it's been like several weeks since I'm working in Bishkek, and before starting my work in Bishkek, I've been to my home village, which is in the same region as Japarov's region. Yes, and I spoke to many people in my village, and many of them are kind of hypnotized. Yes, I could say, because I try to kind of explain the situation and other points of view to them, and they didn't seem to be accepting those alternative ideas or alternative opinions. And I've also, in my opinion, I guess, people who are supporting Japarov are frustrated because what we have experienced for last couple of years, and especially because what we have experienced during the pandemic, and they say that they have a lot of economic problems. They are concerned about the rising food prices, and as Asel said, they think that Japarov, when Japarov comes to the power, if Japarov is elected as the new president, he will solve all these problems. So in my opinion, I guess we are witnessing kind of rise of maybe nationalism, and also rise of conservatism, traditionalism in our society. And I've also noticed that we are witnessing the result of the lack of education in our society for the last couple of decades.
I think that's increasingly a problem elsewhere in the world as well. Batik, if you have any thoughts on that quickly, and please.
We see the rise of a populist movement in Kyrgyzstan unseen before. That's why Japarov unites people from all segments of society who are frustrated strongly by the interim government after 2010, Atambayev and Jeenbekov's regime. They failed to just kept their promises, because when they came to power, they uplifted the expectations of a people to the level that they cannot sustain, and failed. And after that, it's a nationalistic movement. And that's why I would like just to turn your attention to the concerns of ethnic minorities. I discussed this issue with the Uzbek fellows whom I know from my work in Osh. And when I asked, can I just quote you or mention you, all of them just asked me, just keep us, just privately in our names. But they were concerned by the return of Mirzakhmatov. They are concerned by the nationalistic sentiments of Japarov. They are concerned by the Kamchibek Tashev, who positioned himself as a leader of Kyrgyz nationalists, and so on. That's why they are today thinking what.
Okay, we've lost you again, so I might pivot to sort of some final thoughts. I think you've highlighted the tremendous problems that the country is facing. Will Japarov face that same high expectations and unable to deliver? He doesn't seem to have any huge promises, huge programs, but the country's got enormous problems with education, enormous problems in the economy, enormous public health problems. Is he going to face that same problem? And are we going to sort of end up anytime soon in a similar sort of political tumult in the country? Any one of the panelists, I don't know, Asel or Kubat or anybody.
Sorry, I didn't understand. So you are suggesting that there's going to be another?
No, I'm just wondering. I mean, we have the ambassador just mentioned that he, the other leaders who've been pushed out, they had such high expectations of the population to solve all the problems. It seems like Japarov is also putting out expectations that he, with his populism can solve the problems, but the problems the country faces are huge. And so, is he going to face that same sort of, disenchantment at some point? And what are the prospects for more tumult coming down simply because the problems continue to grow?
Yeah, I mean, there are all these structural sources for instability. For one thing is, of course, the economic situation in the country, which is aggravated by the pandemic and the world, the state of world. And on the other hand, simply this, as I mentioned already, this very problematic institution of presidency in Kyrgyzstan, which is going to continue simply being a source of instability. And I mean, there are different opinions. People say that the maximum giving some 2-3 years to Japarov before he's also ousted by somebody else. What I'm concerned with is that this kind of political behavior of ending with undesired political elites with ousting is becoming a norm. Like ordinary people simply saying, oh, this is not a problem. We bring him to power, but we're also going to be the ones who are going to depose him from power. Kind of seems like a very easy game, kind of a very direct connection to politics, as a representative democracy in execution. But I'm really kind of concerned that this is becoming a normalcy for Kyrgyzstan, for ordinary people, because this is, of course, going to bring the country to anarchy.
It doesn't solve the people's problems at all. Any final thoughts? We have a couple, final thoughts about, final questions about criminality. Is there any prospects to address this? I think we've talked about China a little bit. Any thoughts about Russia? And has Japarov consolidated support with Russia, or with at least, groups that have ties to Russia? Any final thoughts on any of those issues before we end it a few minutes late? Sure.
Kyrgyzstan already in China's debt trap, and that's why I think for survival of this regime, Sadyr Japarov will try to just make connections with China more viable. How it will happen, we don't know. We don't know. Secondly, he will try to just get closer to Russia, to look closer. But regarding the West, Japarov's movement is anti-Western populist movement, and he will try to maximize his influence and power on that kind of sentiments. And you are right that he just raises the expectation of people to a level which will not cannot sustain. But I think that after this presidential election, we will try to determine the outcomes of the upcoming parliamentary election and can consolidate power for the next few years, given their popularity. But after that, it's difficult to predict, because I don't see any signs that they will be successful in modernization of a country and introducing structural reforms in economy.
Great. Kubat, Asel, Akilai, any final thoughts?
Just one thought. Of course, we are yet to see who will win this election, but the new members of this new government, which came to power after the October events, they are admitting themselves that they have very limited time, and they have very limited confidence given from the voters. And for example, the head of the current government, not the head, the chief staff of this government recently said to me in an interview that they have only around 6 or 8 months to show something to voters. Otherwise, people start showing their frustration again. So, but at the same time, the current government and alongside Japarov are giving quite a huge promises, and they are giving a lot of promises, and also they are promising a lot of reforms. Whether it will be delivered within those 6 months or 8 months, it is a big question.
Okay, thank you. Akilai or Asel, any final comments or?
Just maybe one very final word about Russia. I mean, I'm really looking forward how actually the relationship between the new leadership and Russia are going to develop, because I'm not sure that Russia actually wants such a neighbor, a nationalist with religious connotations on its southern borders. Russia was already very tense with the interethnic conflict in 2010, because although the conflict was between the Kyrgyz and the Uzbeks, the Russians had also by-side effects on this as well. So it would be interesting how to kind of to observe that, because if Russia also going to turn back, China is going to be our main partner, and that's going to be very problematic.
Yep. Great. All right.
Thank you very much. So the final words from me would be that we were panicked, we were pessimistic, but now I see that if Japarov will be, more and more aggressive towards the civil society, not just the civil society, but the people in common, and also if we see more and more this kind of situations where actually he says one thing and then he does another thing, or he does one thing for himself and for his friends, and then he does another thing for ordinary people, then I expect, I'm very optimistic here, but then I expect that the civil society will grow, the civil society will be even much stronger, especially the journalists, the media, the bloggers, the activists, and I see here the opportunity for this, I would say the minority of Kyrgyz society to actually build the bridges with the regional influencers and regional leaders that actually is a problem. It's a big gap between us. So I see here the opportunity for us.
It's good. It's always good to end on a slightly more optimistic note. So thank you. Thank you for that. I want to thank all four of you for your participation and your insights today. I apologize to both you and our audience for going a little bit over, but there was a lot to talk about and a lot of interesting questions came in. I want to also remind our audience that we have another session on Kazakhstan's parliamentary elections, What's Next? It's going to be hosted by GW on Tuesday, the 12th of January at 10 a.m. Washington, D.C. time. I want to thank everybody, both our speakers and our audience and our co-sponsors, and hope everybody stays safe, and we'll be watching what happens in Kyrgyzstan this weekend.